This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game.
Hey there, this is Simon, and this is my Blind Seer deck. So, this is Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, and it is for lots of extra mana. This is a mono blue deck, so there's lots of devotion to add to your mana pool. I've got these dividers in here, and the reason is this deck has a lot of old cards. It's got a lot of very strange play. So what I wanted to do was really define the differences and sort of remind myself when I might need to help y'all sort of follow along, because there's some odd interactions, to say the least, in this deck. So after Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, we have 39 islands, working on some non-basics, but for now, that's where we're at. Let's get into the cards. Tunnel Vision here. Usually a 1-kill card in Commander, if you get the right name. With Eldrazi, it's not as good as it used to be, but there's just a ton of effects in this deck, which we'll get to later, that could be used with Tunnel Vision if you can put some cards on the bottom of someone's library. Especially combined with this card. This card helps you put one card of your choice on the bottom of their deck, and then you can Tunnel Vision following it. If you have enough mana and the right cards, you can sort of do a 1-2 punch and try and kill them, assuming they don't have Eldrazi. These cards are in the beginning because these are sort of related. This lets you see the top card of someone's library. If you manage to put it on the bottom, you can then, give them a bad day. Like I said, these cards are just sort of generic, good blue cards. They don't really have anything to do with the deck. Capsize is just a good, solid card. Rhystic Study is just a good, solid card. Okay, so let's get into some of the actual interesting stuff. Oh, right. We have to do some mana fixing, so this is going to find our Nykthos. This can only find Nykthos, really, or islands, so that's why it's in there. Caged Sun. This is for mana acceleration, mana ramp in mono blue. There's not a lot of ramp in blue, so that sort of helps a lot with that. These are to help the general out. As you remember, the general has a activated ability that costs 1 colorless and 1 blue. So Training Grounds here makes it just 1 blue. Illusionist's Bracers lets us copy that effect to make multiple things change colors for the same price as 1 activation. And again, Heartstone, which lets us reduce the cost of that activated ability. So those are all ways to increase mana and reduce the cost of the general's ability, which is going to be a central part of the deck. Here are some redundancies. So these are ways to change the color of all of the creatures if your general's not out and you still have cards that interact with that effect. This is a way to change one creature's card. It's called Quickchange. This is Sisay's Ingenuity. When it comes into play, you draw a card and it gives a weaker version of the general's ability. Remember, the general's ability is target spell or permanent. Becomes color of your choice. So this says just target creature, but it draws you a card and it can turn sort of one of your creatures into kind of a deputy general if he gets tucked or hurt or something. Glamerdye is a special case because this, instead of changing the actual color of a card, it changes the words that interact with the colors, which can lead to some really, really awesome, cool combos, but they kind of have to come up and play. You kind of have to, one of the things about this deck is you just sort of have to figure out what things your opponents have that interact with colors and how you can maybe give them a bad day. So now we're going to get into the different various cards that interact well with changing the colors of permanents and spells. And I'm going from weak to strong in general, sort of. Just so you can see the various effects. So this is well-laid plans from Invasion. It prevents all damage to 2 creatures that they share a color. So what you do is you use your general to take 2 creatures that are fighting and you change their colors so that they can't get hurt. So this enables you to turn one of your gut dudes into a chump blocker. It enables someone to, for example, turn one of their... You can change someone else's thing into a chump blocker and do some good politicking. This counters a spell if it shares a color with a creature you control. It's, you know, if you have to pay the double colorless double blue to use this and his activation, it's not very good, but it's on theme, so it's in there. This is Mourner's Shield. So when it enters the battlefield, you exile a card from a graveyard, and it prevents all the damage that the source of that color would do. So what you can do is, when someone casts a burn spell at you, or at a creature, or someone tries to attack you with a creature, you can change the color of that creature or burn spell, and then use this, and you can prevent all the damage. Notice that it's prevent all damage a source of your choice, so it'll prevent even targeted damage and even progenitus damage, or things that have protection. This is just a way to pump up your blue dudes, or you can pump up other colors and turn your dudes temporarily and give them pluses and minus buffs. Really confuse your opponents in combat, which is always fun. This also gives you the ability to turn one creature into a color of your choice, so it's kind of like those ones from before, but it also has this powerful ability, which is to gain control of a monocolored creature. A really fun thing to do is to turn a multicolored creature monocolored, and then gain control of it, or to turn an Eldrazi blue and steal it, or something like this. So this is another. There's quite a few artifacts in here, and there's a bunch of blue creatures, and just getting more mana for your general to do colorless stuff and giving your dudes buffs is great. Plus, again, it's blue creatures, so you can pump plus or minus your guys and mess around in combat like you probably normally wouldn't be able to. This guy, you know, he basically reanimates all the time. If you are willing to pay the 5, you can just play him from your graveyard whenever. If you need a chump blocker or anything like that, he's really great for that. Konda's Banner, this is from Kamigawa. It gives all creatures that share a color +1/+1. All creatures that share a creature type +1/+1. Note that this is all creatures, not just your creatures, so it's kind of an exception to the normal rule of that. So you can choose some really interesting colors, and now it enables you to do all those same combat tricks I mentioned before, which you can pump up or debuff your opponent's guys depending on what color they are or what creature type they are. This is Soul of Ravnica. If you have just a ton of mana, you can change a couple of your other permanents into different colors. And again, Training Grounds is out. It might reduce the cost of this activated ability, but you can just draw a bunch of cards if you just have a ton of mana at the end of turn, which will sometimes happen. Just enables you to draw a few more cards, and it works in the graveyard too, which is nice. So this is Barrin's Unmaking. It's got sort of wordy, but basically whatever the most common color is of cards, you can bounce any permanent that has a color of that. It's not super great, but again, it's on theme. So this card's fun because it gives your dude Intimidate, and you can kind of pick his color, so you can pick who he intimidates. So if you put this on a general, for example, he'll be a 5/5 who can just intimidate whatever he wants. And even if they have an artifact creature, you can be like, I feel like he's going to make that artifact blue, and so the artifact creature can't block him. So that's really neat. Or black or blue, because it turns in black as a zombie, but lots of cool stuff there. So those are just sort of some general things that interact with colors. Now we're going to get into protection effects on creatures. So this is most of the creatures. So a lot of these creatures you won't have seen around just because they are basically terrible outside of this deck, but Flying Pro Red. So the reason that this deck is really awesome is once you get the general online, you get 1 or 2 of these creatures out. They're kind of invincible. For example, Pro Red, you can turn anything red, and so they can't burn it, they can't destroy it, they can't target it, you'll counter whatever they target it with, and they can't kill it with creatures with damage because it's got protection from whatever you fight them with. And so here's just various versions of that. So we got a Flying Pro Green guy, Cerulean Wyvern from Mirage there. This guy is Coast Watcher, so he's similar to the Sea Sprite from before, but he's from Scourge and Pro Green. Here's Weatherseed Faeries with Flying and Pro Red. This is Aven Smokeweaver with Flying Pro Red. Of course, Master of Waves, who is just great. And makes a bunch of blue elementals in addition to having, guess what, protection from red. Okay, so now we're going to get into a lot of the stuff from before is just interacting interestingly with colored effects. This is going to be cards that are red or green hosers. So cards that have historically been designed to just really mess up red or green really badly, and so they become kind of bad with age because they aren't used very often, but in this deck they become really great. So this permanently taps any creature. It only checks red or green when it enters the battlefield, so it'll be permanently tapped regardless, so you can even hit a Blightsteel Colossus with this and just keep it tapped forever. So this is tricky. So the way that the rules of Magic work, it turns out that if you turn a spell into a different color on the stack, it will resolve as that spell. So what you do here is you can pay the colorless and a blue, you can turn a creature on the stack, a creature spell, into a green creature spell. So if they cast Blightsteel Colossus, you can say, I'm going to turn that into a green creature on the stack. It then resolves as a green Blightsteel Colossus. And what that means is this costs 3 mana less. So then you can just play this for 3 mana instead of 4 mana, basically, when it happens. It's not actually that good of an improvement, but it's a super, super cute interaction that you'd never see in any other cards, so it's fun. This is Homarid Shaman from Fallen Empires. So Homarid Shaman, you can pay a blue and tap target green creature. And what this does is you can tap down all of the green creatures because, let's face it, green plays a lot of creatures. But you can also tap down any number of other creatures if you pay 3 mana per creature. I think it's really important to note, and I'll bring it up again later for a specific set of cards, but one of the most common tricks to using this deck is to wait until the end of the person's turn before your turn or before a person's turn on their end of turn step. And the reason that's important is because at the end of a person's end of turn step, you can then use your general's ability at instant speed to turn any number of creatures green or whatever color, and then they will remain that color through that opponent's turn. So, before you pass the turn to your next opponent, at the end of your turn, on your end step, you turn a bunch of things green. They will remain green through your opponent's entire turn. And you can really wreck their day if you do it right, because you can turn all the creatures green at the end of one of their turns and then turn them blue. The reason that's important is because if it's your turn and you want to tap down all their creatures so they can't block you for whatever reason, you can turn all their creatures green and then wait until your turn. And on your turn, if you turn all their creatures green at the end of their turn, their creatures will still be green. You can tap down all their creatures and then swing through. And that'll come up again, but that's one of the tricks that you use with those more mana-intensive cards if you don't have the mana. So these are cards for tunnel vision to put things on top or bottom of the deck, and hopefully manipulate them to the bottom for the one-shot kill. So this is Consign to Dream. It puts creature on top. This is Etherwell. This puts a red creature on the bottom, so now it's any creature it puts on the bottom, and then you tunnel vision them, and then they die. Hunting Drake puts a red or green creature on top of the library. This is King Crab, so it's a repeatable top of library effect. I think it's maybe the only one in the game. There's not many of them. But any creature now, so it's just a really powerful ability. This is Essence Leak. So this is where that end of turn nonsense comes into play. So the way this works is, at the end of the person before you, at the end of their turn, you turn something red or green. On your turn, you cast Essence Leak for 1 blue onto whatever that thing was, whatever that red or green thing is now. And so let's say they have, I don't know, something ridiculously expensive like Kozilek out, okay? You turn it green at the end of the person before you's turn. It's then green during your turn. You cast this on it. It remains green. On your end of turn step, when that creature would lose its greenness, you turn it green again, and then it remains green for their turn. And at the beginning of their upkeep, they have to pay 12 mana or sacrifice their Kozilek. So it's a kind of a convoluted, strange way to kill something, but it's in theme and it's wonky, so that's why I like it. This is Dreamtides from Visions. It makes it so that green creatures can't untap, and any other creature has to pay 2 more to untap at all. So again, this is one where at the end of your turn, or the end of whatever turn it is before the person who has all the green stuff, you turn a bunch of stuff green. It will remain green on their turn. They won't be able to untap any of the things that are green, any of the creatures. This is the same thing. It keeps all red creatures tapped down, but in addition has a cool sort of blue Wrath type effect where you can tap all the red creatures when it enters the battlefield. This is Wrath of Marit Lage from 8th edition. Don't know that it was actually printed in any other sets. So this is a really powerful effect. So this turns any spell red, and if you remember, Blind Seer's ability applies to spells and creatures, so you can counter any spell for 4. You can do it repeatedly, you can do it on anyone's turn at any time. It's absolutely brutal. The only thing better than Dow's is this obscenely obscure card. So this is Tidal Control from Alliances, and it has a cumulative upkeep, so it will go away, but any player, not just you, can pay 2 colorless or 2 life to counter any red or green spell. So all you have to do is pay 1 colorless and 1 blue and turn any spell red or green. After that, you give priority to literally every other player. So literally every other player has to decide whether they want to pay 2 colorless or 2 life before it comes back to you. And if they choose to do so, the spell is countered. So you can literally counter Armageddon or Apocalypse or any terrible spell that's going to destroy the board. Any large-scale creature, you can counter any of them as long as you change the color of it. It only costs a colorless and a blue, and then you can just pay 2 life. And all the other players have to choose whether they want to do it first, so it's a great politics card. It's perhaps the most powerful card in the deck, and it instantly locks down the game in a lot of cases and lets you just sort of win. But it's a really powerful card. The one problem is the cumulative upkeep, and this card is so good that I put Sisay, Heart of Oceans, in here to get rid of those counters. So Sisay says at the beginning of your upkeep, it eats a counter from a permanent you control. So it just eats the counters. It's only in there for Tidal Control, but it's just a sweet effect, and it's 3 obscure cards, these 2 in your general doing something amazing, which is my favorite thing to do in the game of Magic, so that's lots of fun. Now we're getting into the really good stuff. So Sword of Feast and Famine, you know what that does. Sword of Body and Mind, War and Peace, Fire and Ice, and of course Light and Shadow. So the swords give your general protection from 2 colors, which means your general is protected from all colors and anything. You can just change any spell or permanent into any other color. So not only is your general basically invincible, but you get all of the sword effects guaranteed because you're always going to hit them, and you always hit them for general damage, and it's always +2/+2 to whatever he was before. So it's great. This is in the same vein. Chroma's Memorial is going to give all your creatures pro-red and pro-black. I don't really care about the other stuff other than it makes your creatures even better. But basically, you can make all of your creatures invincible at any time from any sort of threat other than Board Wrath, which you can hopefully counter. Now we're going to get into the Wrath effects. So this returns all permanents of the color of your choice to their owner's hands. So the obvious way to use this is to just turn everything a color that is the most common color that your opponents have and bounce all their permanents. A less obvious thing is to target lands, artifacts, things that are not normally having colors, and to turn those things, use at the end right before your turn, leave all your mana untapped until the end of the turn of the person before you, and again using that end of turn step trick, turn all their stuff into a certain color, and then on your turn, turn everything else into the same color, and then use the last 4 mana you have to bounce all of it. Breaching Leviathan sleeps a whole bunch of creatures that are non-blue, but because it's non-blue, you can sort of pick and play some politics with it. All is Dust. This is probably the only deck where you're going to see All is Dust make them blow up a bunch of lands, but this is the same principle, that end of turn step thing. You just turn a bunch of lands into a color, and you can one-sided Armageddon. I'm not a fan of blowing up lands normally, but when you use blue mana and tons of it, and Eldrazi to do it, I mean, that's pretty cute. Hibernation, this is the cheapest one of the Wraths. It's also at instant speed, which is absolutely disgusting. So you can actually do an instant speed, return all permanents your opponents control effect, which is like just really, really powerful if you have the mana. This is another Wrath type effect. You can return all blue creatures to your opponent's control to their owner's hands. So you turn all the creatures blue and they bounce them, and this is really good against blue decks because now the blue decks can't play creature spells. Glamerdye is also really great with this, so if you get the Glamerdye, you can turn that word blue into other things, and then they won't be able to play whatever creature spells they have, so you have a little Iona there. This is the last few cards. So this is Isochron Scepter. Isochron goes great with all the 2 mana instants you've seen thus far, but it goes especially great with the next few cards. So these next 3 are pretty similar. So this is Flash Flood from Legends. It destroys a red permanent or returns a mountain to its owner's hand, which is odd, but destroying a red permanent means that with this on an Isochron Scepter and your general, you can Vindicate for 4 blue. 2 colorless, 1 colorless and a blue. For 4 mana, you can Vindicate any permanent by turning it red. And then these 2 cards, you've got your Hydroblast and your Blue Elemental Blast. They read the same. Counter a red spell or destroy a red permanent. So for 4 mana, you can Vindicate / Counterspell, which I'm pretty sure if they were to print that on a card, it would not cost 4 mana. But you can do it every turn if you put it on the Isochron Scepter. So these are just like one-shot destroy or kill anything that anyone plays. Just really powerful decks. Thanks for watching CMDR decks. Please show your appreciation by liking and subscribing below.